Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. Pleasure to be back. We were here a couple of weeks ago with good news, but this is even more good news, and it's an exciting day. First, to the man with many titles and many friends, the leader, the majority leader, His Highness, the Honorable, the Grand Poobah of Rochester, Joe Morelli. Let's give him a round of applause for all his great work. To Mayor Lovely Warren, who's doing a great job. The article in the New York Times today was a beautiful tribute. If you haven't seen it, not that I always advocate reading the New York Times, but this article was a beautiful tribute to Rochester and the progress that we've made. Let's give her a round of applause. To Senator Joe Robach, our partner, who's doing a great job. Pleasure to be with you, Joe. Let's give him a round of applause. Senator Rich Funke, pleasure to be with you. County Executive D'Onofrio, it's a pleasure to be with you. To Bob Duffy, who was a phenomenal lieutenant governor. I miss him every day, but he's home doing what he loves, working for Rochester. Let's give him a round of applause. Howard Zemsky, our economic development guru, who is doing great. Pleasure to be with him. And you're going to have the luxury of the company of our great Lieutenant Governor all day long, and you should be in very, very good hands. Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul. Pleasure to be with you. We have a special guest, Elaine K Mark, who you're going to hear from. I worked with Elaine K Mark years ago. I don't want to say many years ago. It makes it sound, just a couple of years ago in the 90s. During the Clinton-Gore administration, she is one of the great thinkers in terms of making government work. The aspect that she brought to the Clinton-Gore administration was called reinventing government, which to me is still the essence of what we're all trying to do, those of us who are in government. How do you make government work today, in today's environment, to actually accomplish the goal, right? That was reinventing government. Nobody argues with the goals of government. The goals are inarguable. I want to build affordable housing. I want to educate children. I want to eradicate poverty. I want to have a cleaner environment. Yes, everybody agrees. The question is, can you actually do it? And is government the vehicle that can actually accomplish that? And that's the question mark, right? Nobody disagrees with the aspirations. The question is, can that vehicle called government actually do it? And is it efficient? Is it effective? And does it actually accomplish the means? And have you reinvented government from a 1950s bureaucracy to something that actually works today? And that is, to me, the profound question for all of us who work in government. And it's the government failure that creates the cynicism and the skepticism. And that then feeds on itself. So prove competence. Prove you can actually do what you say government is trying to do. If you're going to build a bridge and actually make sure it stands up and make sure it's on time and make sure it's on budget. You're going to invest in education, actually get to the root of the problem and fix the schools, make the government work. That's reinventing government. She's worked on that. She's been at the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. She's at Brookings. She is really a dynamo. Give her a round of applause. It's a pleasure to have her. And it's a pleasure to be with all of you, because you are the people who are actually going to make this happen. You are actually going to do it, right? This is not about talking, thinking, contemplating. We are at a moment of great possibility and great resources. And it's literally up to you to make the difference. And it reminds me of the story of the farmer and the flood. I don't know if you know this story, but it's apropos. You'll see why at the end. The county officials looking at the weather forecast, and they see a forecast that says there's going to be a lot of rain coming over the next few days. And they were very concerned about this weather forecast, and they watched it and they prepared, and sure enough, it started to rain, and it was raining for days, and now there were several inches of rain out there. And they had these big trucks, and they got in this big truck, and they go out to a rural part of the county, and they go to a farmhouse, and they knock on the door, and the farmer comes to the farmhouse door, and they say to the farmer, look, there's a flood, there's a lot of water, we think it's going to get worse. Good news is we have a truck, we can take you and your belongings to safety. And the farmer looks back at the county officials and says, no, I'm a God-fearing man. I go to church every Sunday. The Lord will take care of me. And they have a little more banter back and forth, but they leave. Sure enough, it keeps raining. It's raining, it's raining. Now there's 6 feet of water. But the county officials, very industrious, like Cheryl's team, they have boats. They get in the boat, they go back out to the farmhouse in the boat. And they find the farmer on the farmhouse, and they say to the farmer, we told you it was going to keep raining and there was going to be a flood and it's dangerous, but we have a boat, we can take you and your belongings to safety. And the farmer says, no, I'm a God-fearing man, I go to church every Sunday, I'm sure the Lord will take care of me. And they go back and forth a little bit, but there's no convincing the farmer, and they leave. Sure enough, rain keeps coming, the dike breaks, and now there's a total flood. And the farmer is standing on the roof of his farmhouse, and the water is up to the farmer's neck. Only his head is above the water, and the waves are starting to lap at his chin. And just his head is above the water, and he's looking up at the sky. And he hears this great rumbling sound as he's looking at the sky, and the clouds start to part. And this great sound gets louder and louder and louder, and it's a helicopter. And it's the county officials in the helicopter. And they throw down a rope, and they say, grab the rope, and we will pull you to safety. With just his head above the water, he says, no, I'm a God-fearing man. I go to church every Sunday. The Lord will take care of me. They say, forget that. We heard that. Grab the rope while you still can. No, I'm a God-fearing man. I go to church every Sunday. Next scene, the farmer's at the pearly gates. And he meets our Lord. And our Lord says, well, welcome to heaven. And the farmer says, well, thank you. I guess it's better than the alternative. But I'm confused, the farmer says. You know, I was a God-fearing man. I went to church every Sunday. I thought you would take care of me. And our Lord looked back at the farmer and said, you're confused, I'm confused. I sent a truck, a boat, and a helicopter. What happened? You know, you're going to hear from all these great resources, but it's going to be up to you to make this happen. And I am very excited with where we are today. I was thinking of seeing Elaine in this situation. She's a Rochester native who's been all across the country, and we worked on these issues in theory in Washington for a lot of years, as I mentioned, on the reinventing government. But the core reinvention, really the policy area that was always the hardest, was exactly what we're talking about today, urban redevelopment. How do you take an urban area, a middle-sized city, that has been lost in the economic transformation, and how do you bring it back? That's what Rochester is, that's what Buffalo is, that's what Syracuse, that's the whole upstate corridor. Worse in New York, like Ohio, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, but worse in New York because in truth the state government was absent for a very long period of time in trying to help those upstate communities with the transition. But what do? And we spent months in Washington designing a program to do this that Bill Clinton actually then used quite successfully, called empowerment zones. And this is an evolution and a growth of that, what we call the Regional Economic Development Councils here. In Washington, there were two theories. There's a Republican theory and a Democratic theory. The Republicans for urban revitalization. The champion was Jack Kemp, God rest his soul, from Buffalo, HUD secretary. He was a friend of mine. He was very kind to me. HUD secretary before I was HUD secretary. His theory was enterprise zones, was the Republican theory. The theory was reduce or relax the taxes in a geographic area, and businesses will go to that area by the force of the private market. They'll make an economic decision to go to that area just because the taxes are better. So take those urban areas of unemployment and enterprise zones, Jack Kemp said, make the taxes very, very low. You'll see businesses go there because of that tax environment. That will generate jobs. Democrats said, that's only half the solution. We don't want just businesses to go to these areas. We want the businesses to actually hire people in those areas as opposed to just import a workforce. So the Democratic answer was targeted jobs, tax credits, et cetera, that linked the benefit to actual employment. And that was empowerment zones. Enterprise zones, adjusted by the Clinton administration, was empowerment zones. Regional Economic Development Councils, REDCs, are the synthesis of both on steroids. We have startup zones which are zero tax zones for 10 years. Zero taxes for 10 years. So if you believe in the Jack Kemp argument, you believe in the Republican argument, the conservative argument, the market will drive, we have that asset in startup zones. Zero taxes. What we found, interestingly enough, is the state's environment are now so competitive that zero taxes alone is not enough. They can get zero taxes in other states. So it's not enough to say no taxes for 10 years. They also require an incentive on top of no taxes for 10 years. So we've really expanded the startup approach. So it's startup plus, where it's no taxes, plus investments. But regional economic development councils, geographic-based, public-private sector partnership, tax incentives, and investment equity, et cetera. And it is working. You read the New York Times article, it is working. You walk down the street in Rochester or Buffalo and you feel that it is working. You look at the numbers. We started 5 years ago, unemployment in Rochester, 7.7%. Today, unemployment 4.6%. So it is working. We now just have to keep it working and we have to take it to the next level. And that's what today is all about. Sustainability is the highest art form of community development. The entire approach of the REDCs begs the question of sustainability, right? Because the REDCs are not forever. The cash grants are not forever. The concept behind an REDC is we will take investment capital, 500 million, 700 million, and we will use that to incentivize and jumpstart the economy. But then that economy has to run on its own, right? The initial cash investment is lighter fluid on the barbecue grill, right? It's to start the fire. But the lighter fluid burns off and then the fire has to take. You can't subsidize private sector growth every year to the tune of hundreds of millions. You can get that private sector engine fired up, which is what we're doing. And if you do it in the right way, that will then be sustainable because the jobs you're creating are bringing more young people in. The population is going up, which is exactly what is happening. More residential growth, more apartments, more affordable housing, and now you have a virtuous cycle that is positive as opposed to the cycle that has been negative for so many decades. So that is the goal of what the REDCs are all about. We are now taking it to the next level, and that is the point of this conference. Everything we have done thus far is top-line macro. right? It's all from above. Reduce state taxes, make the state more competitive, bring in investment capital through the REDC process, but this is all macro. The art form now for you is to bring it down to the community level and make that development community by community. That's where you actually get sustainability, not just on the top level, but on the community level. And you take that community as a living organism, and how do you bring life back to that community? And how do you take all these different pieces that all these different agencies have and bring them together so you give life to a community that is now viable and that life is now sustainable? How do you bring the MWBE program with the poverty program, with the job training program, tied to the university, tied to the new employer that came in? And how do you knit that together so you have a quilt of community development for that community that then develops its own energy and its own life and grows from there? That's your mission. That is your mission. You have to paint that picture community by community. And you have the brush and you have the paint. We will make every resource available. But you have to do it. And that's why it's the farmer and the flood. You have a truck, you have a boat, you have a helicopter. Seize the opportunity that you are being given. And my last point is this. It has been a long and dry 30 years in Rochester, and in Buffalo, and in Syracuse. The economy turned bad in the 60s and the 70s. That's now 50 years of a bad economy. 50 years. 50 years where the state government really didn't step up to the plate with these kinds of resources. 50 years where you didn't have a room like this with people really committed to doing it. This is a moment in time. Use this moment in time, because I don't know that this confluence of circumstances happens again. Bob Duffy, Elaine, was mayor of Rochester, and he had been banging his head against the Albany wall for many, many years, trying to get help for Rochester. And Albany had turned a deaf ear. And I was the Attorney General, and whenever I talked to Bob, he said, you know, state government is nowhere. I'm on my own here in Rochester. I was running for governor. I wanted Bob Duffy to run with me for lieutenant governor. I said, if you want to help Rochester, you have to go to Albany, because only state government has the resources to help Rochester. And we have invested more in upstate New York than the state government has ever invested in history. In history. And I am proud of it. And I'm proud of it for upstate New York, and I'm proud of it for the entire state, by the way. Because even from downstate New York's point of view, a healthier upstate is in downstate's best interest, because it's still one economy, one set of books. But this hadn't happened in many, many years. The moment is here. The resources are here. The state government is your partner. The private sector is part of it. The Regional Economic Development Councils are working. Fran Barrett and the Poverty Initiative is working. This is the moment to strike. If we're going to make it happen, we're going to make it happen now. We reversed the decline that was there for decades. The arrows are pointed up. The energy is up. People believe you can do this again. The cynicism is down. The optimism is up. People have bought into the concept that Rochester can have a future. Just make it happen. Make it happen. And you can. And you are. And it is happening. just take it to the next level. Thank you, and God bless you.